How are you at the moment dealing with all this, and how are you rating what the government is doing to contain this pandemic?
Well, I think the government is trying to do what they can do, given the fact that we have 1.3 billion people living in India, and that itself is a formidable task. The reality is that we definitely do not have enough money to test 1.3 billion people. So that's the first challenge that we're going to face. I mean, even if you take the U.S., where they say they've done 10 million tests, we probably have done tests that have probably crossed a couple of million, but we don't even have enough as much money as the United States. So thinking of 1.3 billion is a dream, I think, unless tests get very, very, very cheap, which they don't look like right now.
Well, tell me a little bit, Mr. Advani, about the way that your group of companies at the moment is handling all this and what you're doing to protect your employees from getting this disease.
Well, at the moment, the challenge is that most of my work is non-essential. So I'm just about being asked to open my offices as of today. And I'm allowed to have 33% of my employees. However, we have been working from home, and that's been kind of working, but we've got infrastructure problems in India that, for example, everybody at the lower level doesn't have a laptop at home, for example. So we have those kinds of problems, but hopefully now that we're getting a partial opening, we will be able to fix that and make sure that people can work from home. They have the right internet and the right laptops and things to be able to do things. So I think that's a plus. But we are limping back to normalcy very, very, very slowly right now.
Speaking of limping, Mr. Advani, what's the path for India's recovery? We have Goldman coming out to say that it expects Q2 a contraction of 45%. Are you making similar assumptions? And if that is so, how does India rise from that level?
Well, April, I think, in India has been, if you're not an essential business, April has been a zero for sure. And May looks like it's going to be, maybe 5 or 10% of capacity for those who sort of basically limped. And the thing is that the main sectors that are the manufacturing sectors have been, really decimated because, for example, the automobile sector, which is a very vibrant sector in India, has not been able to get off the ground because all the factories in the chain have not been able to start. And plus, nobody's been able to get to showrooms to buy things and take deliveries. So the number of two-wheelers and four-wheelers that have been sold has been minuscule. I'd love to see what the May numbers come out in the next couple of weeks, but the April numbers are pretty close to zero, which is painful.
How are you positioning in terms of the stock market? We know that pharma companies, healthcare companies have benefited the most. Will they continue to lead, or are there perhaps value to be had in battered sectors like perhaps even airlines?
Well, I think there are two things that are happening. All the policies that have come out from the government have benefited the larger companies who have been able to take advantage. And of course, as you mentioned, the three sectors that have been obviously benefited are pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, and healthcare, which have seen some buying and also obviously firmness in prices. But the reality is, that there's going to be. We've also had this dislocation problem that has been written up about in the world's press in the last couple of days, where our migrant workers were still in the cities being supported by state governments and have been gradually moving back to their villages, and in some cases walking, because we have no trains running at the moment, very few trains. They just started a few trains, and no airlines, and even interstate movement of trucks and buses has been stopped. So this migrant pool of workers, which, every family had sent one or two people to the city to try and earn more, those people have started walking back to the villages, and it's actually causing a lot of anguish, a lot of chaos. And I think that's what's hurting the country more than anything, because the jobs will come back, but the labor that does the bottom end of that job has gone back to the villages, and they've kind of disappeared. So, that's the challenges that our country is facing. And these are, as you said, 1.3 billion people. So numbers are huge.
So, what about the Reserve Bank here, Mr. Advani? How could they do more here in terms of monetary policy? And if they did more, how much of an effect would it have?
Well, I think so far what the government's policies have been to lend money, and the only giving of money has come to the bottom of the pyramid where it should be. I mean, they've tried to house these migrant laborers. They've tried to get Indian industry to pay their lower paid salaries. They mandated it. And now the Supreme Court says you can't mandate people to pay salaries, for people who don't show up to work. So, I think that they've been trying to do what they want to do, trying to protect the person at the lower end of the pyramid. We are a socialist country, and therefore that's where they are. But I think that because we have a billion plus people, we just don't have the money to be able to do it all. And, they're choosing their shots carefully. Some are correct, some are not correct. And they put incredible burden on the Reserve Bank of India to try and do things. But, even the Reserve Bank of India has finite resources. And just because the government pushes off fiscal responsibility onto monetary policy doesn't mean it goes away. The reality is the government has not stepped up to take losses for this 1 month or 1.5 months of very low income. And until they figure out who's going to take the loss, it's going to be a challenge.
All right, well, the Nifty's just opened up in negative terrain. But, Mr. Advani, I just want to get another point across to you, and that is with the oil price where it is and how low it's gone. Isn't that a bit of a boost for the country, at least at a bad time, with regards to that being the biggest import that India has?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that April, because of lack of activity, we actually had a trade surplus. And the reason is that we haven't imported any oil, we haven't imported any gold, which has been another big import. And the third thing that we actually import is a lot of electronics and things like that, which are not essential, so they haven't actually been done. Low oil prices definitely helps the Indian economy. The question is, and I asked this question, we're in lockdown. When's the last time you actually went to the petrol pump to fill your car? The trucks aren't moving, the cars aren't moving, so our oil demand has gone to zero. So it's a new economy. However, low oil prices in the long run will do very well for India. And hopefully that'll make a difference to our balance of payments, which is, has been a gentle negative, and there's no reason why it can't be a positive.